Hello guys, welcome back to Style and Direction, a menswear podcast without the stuffiness. This is your host, Ethan Wong.
I'm your other host, Spencer Audie.
I remember when I was editing, because MJ has been dealing with some other stuff right now.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, his house was leaking.
I know what that's like.
Yeah, Spencer knows. I think you actually address it, in one episode. Maybe?
Yeah, well, if we were recorded at all during the summer, there was about a month and a half where I was living in a hotel because my water damage.
Yikes.
Yeah,
that literally happened to MJ like a couple weeks ago, and so he's still dealing with, as Ethan Hunt would say, the fallout. It's a good film.
Yeah.
But
now on Blu-ray.
Yeah, where was I going with this? I totally forgot where I was going with this.
So in the last episode, or in some, you've been editing, and
Oh.
you noticed something.
Oh yeah, didn't you say that you forgot to introduce yourself at one point?
Yeah, in one episode, I think I forgot to introduce myself because I made a joke, and then I just got caught up in how funny it was.
Yeah, remember you guys to go to styleanddirectionjokesexplained.com for that content. It's not real. I don't know if anyone's actually gone there.
Don't go there because we're probably also not going to make it.
So. It's a joke. So if we're explaining that joke, Scott Arkerman did that, and they made a website with Squarespace. And if Squarespace is listening and they want to sponsor us like every other podcast,
we will make the website.
Yeah, we will make this website. He did that. I don't know if it was a joke or not because it exists, but it's blank. It's like a blank website. So I don't know if he made it just for that, so it's like a clickable link. But yeah, it's not real. We will make it if Squarespace sponsors us. Build it beautiful. Yep. So today we're going to be doing something really cool, something that I've wanted to do, I think, ever since the video actually came out.
It's November.
Yeah, November of 2018. We're going to be talking about the Permanent Style Symposium. If you guys don't know who Permanent Style is, that's not his name, first of all.
It's not?
His name's not
I thought
PS.
It was Simon Permanent Style.
But yeah, Simon Crompton is the author of Permanent Style. Author? Writer? Yeah, both.
Yeah, creator.
There you go. It's like what I would be, right? Actually, has he written a book? Technically, he has written a book.
He is
the Style Guide and the best menswear in the world or something like that.
The best of British or whatever. Yeah,
so he is this ex-journalist because he works for his blog full time now. What's that feel like? It's one of the largest menswear websites in the world, focusing mainly on bespoke tailoring, fine goods, leather, etc. He literally has an article on a bespoke cashmere hoodie, I'm pretty sure. So it's a little bit of he's kind of an aspirational kind of guy, and because of his clout, I guess, he has done a couple symposiums, and if you don't know what that means, you can go to a dictionary, or I'll tell you, it's basically like a gathering of like a talk or something.
You are the dictionary.
I'm the captain now.
Yeah.
And so he's done some in the past which we might look at in future episodes. He's definitely done one on the Style Dinner, which was to promote the Style Guide, a book that came out almost 2 years ago. And so, yeah, he's done all these kind of different gatherings. He did one on young tailors. He did one on media and menswear, which I would really love to get into as the guy who contributes to that whole thing. But this one is the most recent one, and it's called Dressing Up in a Dressed Down World. And it took place, as Spencer said, in November. In New York, in some fucking random library or something. In the beginning, he's all like, "Oh, big ups to all people of Stars and Stripes." No, he says big ups to I think Anderson and Shepherd, and Bud shirts or something. And I'm like, were they like, hey, let's
I think because he said that they dressed the mannequins.
Okay.
There were no mannequins in the video, so I'm assuming it was part of some.
They're having this exhibit at at literally it's like a public library.
Yeah.
Behind them on the stage.
What's the theater in Brooklyn where all podcasts go eventually? The Bell House? Maybe it was in the Bell House.
The library.
The Bell House Library. Yeah.
But
maybe it was the Library Strip Club in Newport Beach or wherever that is.
Hell yeah, it should. That's where we're gonna do ours. But no, yeah, it's like a regular library. And it's just, I think it's kind of funny, hey, this is where we're going to hold our thing, I think previous ones I think were like at Pity, definitely. There was like some other place. It's kind of like, in my head I imagine it like setting up like the rec center. Like you put your name down, like, oh, at 5 o'clock
You have
we're gonna
this room, and then right after there's gonna be like a
like
town
a bingo
council meeting.
Yeah, her bingo tournament. It reminds me of In the Office. It's In the Office when Andy goes like, I signed us up for 3 mods. A mod is 15 minutes, and then yeah, you guys know how to watch The Office. Anyway, so that's what we're talking about, because it's a very interesting topic that we get asked a lot whenever we go live.
There's been a lot written and talked about over the past 10, 20 years.
Yeah, and so if I wrote down, I took I made notes, and we watched this like when it came out, and I watched it again just in preparation for this pod, and my notes are basically just a transcript of everything that was said in the video.
Yeah.
So here is who was in it. So Simon Crompton, the chair. You have Jay Fielden, who is the editor-in-chief of Esquire. He previously did work for
Town and
Country.
Made an incredibly twee video there.
Yeah, his voice, if you watch it, he sounds kind of like a combination of maybe Frasier with like Jeff Goldblum. Because every time like Jay Fielden says like I feel like it's like he's like, and it's kind of got this kind of,
I don't believe in chakras.
Yeah, I was about to make that joke.
Yeah.
But he has that kind of vibe about him. He's he's the editor of Town. He was editor of Town and Country. Now he's Esquire. So just put that into your mind. There's a little blog post over at Put This On, that talks about Esquire and GQ and how the editors-in-chief, Jay Fielden for Esquire and Will Welsh of GQ, couldn't be any more different. Will Welsh is very young, new media, into hip-hop and basketball culture, and then Jay Fielden's kind of like this, Town and Country kind of guy.
Yeah, he didn't like based on what he was saying in the video. He didn't seem like the most old-fashioned person in the room.
He wasn't, but then if you look at in that Put This On thing, and just a heads up, me and Spencer are very left people. Jay Fielden's a very centered, maybe center-right kind of guy. Like he talks about how, like he has a whole tweet thing about how socialism doesn't work because look at Venezuela, PC culture is killing media. I'm probably taking these a little bit paraphrased, but if you look into that Put This On article, like they have these kind of links to it. But anyway, that's Jay Fielden, and he definitely didn't come across this polarizing, I guess, to us in the video. He's that's different for a different time. You've got Scott Schumann, the photographer, blogger, I guess, of the Sartorialist. He is. A lot of people talk about how he influenced them. To me, I don't think he did that as much, even though I'm a photographer. It's kind of surprising. I think I talked about before how I didn't even know who Bill Cunningham was till very close to his death.
Yeah.
But Scott Schumann, his work has been featured in, magazines, GQ, a bunch of different stuff.
But just based on his episode of Blammo, it sounds like he really kind of, like, that's how people know about Pity. Outside of the and he's incredibly influential.
Yeah, and I'm sure
internet menswear blogging.
Right, but when I say I'm not influenced by him, I meant like I didn't like follow him specifically, but I'm pretty sure I've seen his work everywhere else, like reposted on Tumblr, Instagram, what have you. And that's probably how I first heard about the Armory, by seeing some guy reblog this thing and someone saying, "Hey, that's the Armory," and I'm like, "What the hell is the Armory?
Yeah,
who the hell is Bucky?
What am I gonna get? Some freaking shields?
Is that another Marvel reference?
What?
Because I made a Winter Soldier reference, and then you said S.H.I.E.L.D. Then you've got Bruce Boyer, who is the author of countless menswear books. I guess you could say he's old. Maybe not old media, but like
he's
literary
been in the game
authoritarian.
For like 50, 60 years.
Another good episode of Blammo, for plugging anything. And then you've got Avril Oates. I'm not super familiar with her. She's the managing director of Ten Corso Como. I should look up what that is, but I am being ignorant.
We didn't.
And then you've got John. She seemed nice, yeah. And then you've got John Dempsey, the group executive director of Estee Lauder. I'm copying these from the YouTube, description. So otherwise, in my notes, I wrote Avril as like Avril Lavigne, and then it turns out it's not. So
nope. And she rocks harder than anybody.
Yeah. But anyway, so these are the people who were doing this whole panel at this like New York library, and it was like Spencer said, it's a oft. Maybe that's the wrong. Yeah, it's a topic that affects kind of all of us, especially me and Spencer, as we are technically newcomers into this world, and especially as younger people, because I think the one thing I didn't like about this, if we're just kind of briefly going over it, they're talking about what's it like to be dressed up, dressed down, talking about millennials, and I'm like, there's not one young person among you. Like, yeah. I mean, I think Jay Fielder might be the youngest person there, but Scott might be the most tapped into social media out of the bunch. So it's kind of like this. It felt very. I wouldn't say. There's some spades that were elitist in the video, and that's something that we've always heard about. Just being into vintage. But they kind of discuss. They kind of got off topic in the middle, but like I said, like they talk about what's it like being into menswear or being into fashion, formal fashion.
Yeah.
In a world where things aren't necessarily formal anymore. And it kind of went, like I said, exactly how I thought it would, of these older people talking about, hey, why don't people wear suits anymore?
Yeah, how come people don't wear suits to the theater?
Right.
Yeah.
And so if I guess we can just go through my notes and we can just pick apart different stuff. So early in the video, so Jay Fielder is the first person. I'm gonna call these guys first name basis. So just because I'm so familiar with them.
They're peers.
Yeah, technically, if you want to stretch that word out. So Jay starts off by saying that it doesn't frighten him. And that's something,
the fact that people are dressing down more often.
Yeah, like, it's not scary, and I definitely, at this point, I agree with him, I think as people who were into vintage, like, we weren't into menswear before this. We were into vintage menswear, almost to the point of, maybe, like, if you're going to say we could be, like, reenacting civilian wear, if you wanted to call it that, if not necessarily military, but civilian wear. And as, as me and Spencer, who have friends who are into, varying stages of vintage, after reading I Am Dandy, it's clear to see how often this stuff changes and how, and by stuff I mean menswear, and how it's always creating something new. And it's, when jeans came about, I'm sure everyone was like, oh my God, what's going to happen to the suit? And you fast forward to today where guys are still wearing suits and jeans. Like, nothing really changed too much.
It's not a replacement. It's just an addition.
Yeah. Oh, man, we could talk about the great replacement stuff for the alt-right. But he does say he doesn't like Pete Davidson because it's slovenly, and he says that he likes Supreme. And I'm like, okay, sure.
Yeah.
And, I could say, I see that too whenever people ask me that. And but he says he doesn't like random ugliness, and he doesn't think that, he thinks that a lot of casualness is not thought out. And that's where I'm starting to disagree, because I, as a young person, and, I have had friends in college, I have friends who are super into streetwear, because of my activities at MFA, and, on Reddit, I have friends who are into, like, very different stuff, Rick Owens, Yoji, a bunch of different stuff. And it's not really random ugliness. And it's not random. It's extremely thought through. It's just not in the way that you would think of like a suit.
Yeah, exactly. It's still, and I think this is going to be our point of view throughout this entire discussion. Is that we think that as long as you have a style that you like and you stick to it, that's really cool. We don't really care if you don't dress the same as us. So yeah, people if you're in like the people that I don't know as many people in the streetwear, but the discussions I've had with people more in that scene, yeah, like Ethan said, it's like it's no more or less difficult or thoughtful to do than just wearing a suit. And this is something that I've said before, but given that, at least in my case, given that I haven't spent as much time developing casual style, I honestly find it more challenging to put together interesting casual outfits, and I have to put more thought into it than I do if I'm just wearing a suit, which comes pretty naturally at this point.
Right. And I think, not to piggyback, there's only two of us talking, but what I found after like going through this, reading the notes and everything, it's that they're combating a dress down culture, but there's two elements of that. and they're trying to attack it both in the same way. The first one is like we just talked about, how fashion, all forms of non-suits is dressing down.
Yeah.
If we're and that's still a style. That there is still as much thought and creativity made into that. I would argue more, because there's no heritage or history behind it. Maybe there is in some at the very beginning of that particular idea, but it's transformed into something totally different, as opposed to, oh, we're gonna take shoulder pads out of the suit. Like, it's not crazy. And then number two is the actual culture behind just not wearing a suit, and it's two very different arguments. And they kind of go through it, but people like I think Bruce Boyer kind of has this kind of issue against both of it. And I think, like, when you talk about Pete Davidson, when Jay's talking about it, I don't think that he's anti-style, because he is. It's more that he's anti-suits,
Mm-hmm.
So it's not that he's, you could argue that he's dressing up, because I'm pretty sure there are lazy Pete Davidson outfits, and then there is Pete Davidson putting together putting together something that's interesting, something that he would go out to, with apparently Kate Beckinsale for some reason,
which is so weird. But I mean, you could see in interviews that Pete Davidson never considers himself a very fashionable person, and he at least claims that he doesn't really put a whole lot of thought into his outfits. So he might not even be the best example. I mean, not to call Jay out for a comment he made months ago, but he might not be the best person. Yeah, might not be the best person to make this argument with. You could talk about someone like, who's the other guy? Who's the other guy? Who's the guy from Superbad? I can't remember his name.
Jonah Hill.
Jonah Hill, yeah. Hill,
yeah.
He seems like he always puts a lot more. I think he's said that he puts more, he's talked about fashion in a way that makes it seem like he thinks about it more than Pete Davidson does.
I mean, even if you look at GQ's videos now, I mean, even though it's not my thing, I still find it very fascinating how these guys kind of put stuff together, and how, there's I'm rediscovering Joji, Filthy Frank, right now, and I was watching a live thing, and he's wearing like a Patagonia vest, but no shirt underneath. And I'm like, it's kind of I don't know why he's wearing it with these kind of baggy jogger kind of things, that are kind of they're kind of carroted. I could be getting it totally wrong just based on my memory, but I'm like, there's probably some thought behind this mixed in with utilitarianism that's totally beyond gray pants and a navy jacket.
Exactly.
It's so much more interesting, and yeah.
And that kind of brings to the next point that we have written down, where Scott argues that things like the dressing down, that hasn't really changed much. I think I don't remember exactly the comment, but I mean he's talking about how you could go back 50 years and people would be having this exact same discussion.
Right, and it goes back to what I said about jeans when they were first introduced. Everyone, it was such a radical thing. And remember, jeans were invented the 1870s, or even maybe slightly before that, by Levi's, or denim, whatever you want to call it. But this whole idea of dressing down has been forever. We stopped wearing corsets, or women stopped wearing corsets, because they just found it uncomfortable. Or it's just I mean, it's like Scott says, and I have it written down next, that it's kind of pushed because of comfort and because of travel. I don't know exactly the travel aspect and how important that is, because you could be talking about how business people today travel more than ever, or movie stars, whatever, but in terms of the regular world, it's just basically comfort.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and
that's
then
why that's what he's talking about, the introduction of stretch and performance fabrics and stuff like that.
Yeah, they kind of go off a little bit about that. I don't think that's too important. I mean, our blanket statement.
Here's where we might disagree, you and me. I kind of like Jay's point where he talks about next, where he says he kind of likes uncomfortable clothes.
Oh God, I don't like that.
Yeah, I know. I don't. I'd never dress, and I'm like, oh, this is incredibly uncomfortable. But at the same time, this is probably my most cantankerous, old man opinion about clothes. Is I'm just not a huge fan of performance fabrics.
Okay. Well, yeah, I'm not either, and
But yeah,
Yeah,
it's like
finish your point.
I kind of get where he's coming from, where he says he likes uncomfortable clothes. And again, I don't dress to be uncomfortable, but I can, if it's a little bit uncomfortable, I can still deal with it.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go back a little bit. So yeah, Scott says about how, like, he sees a future as like comfortable stretch suits or whatever. I can speak for both of us. We don't really like stretch fabric just because it feels fake. It's more so like the breathability and the feeling of the fabric, not necessarily how it feels when we move. Because like I have jeans that have been broken in and washed, and they feel perfectly fine just as much as a stretched jean would. In fact, I feel more comfortable in the 100% denim fabric. But then Jay says that he likes uncomfortable clothes because it makes him feel alive. Like, like you're feeling something.
Maybe here's a better way of putting my point.
Yeah.
And you just kind of brought this up. Like when you get a new pair of denim jeans or like a brand new like Oxford shirt, sometimes they can be a little bit stiff.
Okay. Yeah.
What I like is like
the breaking in process.
When you break it in, I find that those are going to be much more comfortable than just a brand new thing that has 2% elasticine in it.
Oh yeah, okay. So I mean, on that point, yeah, we agree. I just think, I think that buy the right size, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think what Jay is trying to do is like, I think he's showing his conservative side of dress, where he's like, oh, I don't care if this is uncomfortable, I'm wearing it because I like it, and I'm like, I feel like that's adhering a little bit too closely to it's a suit, so I should just wear it because it's a suit. And it's there is this essence of comfortability, which is what I always preach. Like soft shouldered stuff, wide leg pants or whatever. And I've never been uncomfortable when I'm wearing, and if I am, I just take it off. I don't feel like suffering, which I think that Jay was trying to do, like, oh, you suffer for your art or you suffer to look good. I'm not sure that you exactly have to. And then next, Avril, man, we're only like 10 minutes into this, but like Avril talks about how, kind of jumping off from what Scott said about, like wearing sneakers with suits. And, but she also mentions that, suits have kind of evolved and how they're more fashion now. And I think that's something that they're also not addressing in this whole thing. Like, they're like, suits are evolving, like they're becoming more and more as a fashion statement instead of
something you have to wear.
Something like you have to wear, and that'll get into the whole Bruce Boyer thing that we'll address in length probably shortly after this, I think. But like Avril says, and that I agree with, we live in like a very nonconformist world. People like to rebel, especially young people. And again, this is going through their whole like, oh, young people, they're always trying to be different. But it's true. Like, and Spencer are probably indications of that, which Avril does say later, where we are the rebels because we like to wear suits and we're comfortable in it. Like, we're not doing it because it's, like Spencer said, like a uniform or something.
Yeah.
And
there's a great article that was on Die Workwear called "The Suit Died, but for Good Reasons," and it came out in July of last year, so a little bit before the discussion. But basically, his point is pretty similar to our point of view, where that you don't have, the suit is not necessary for the business world anymore. Like, many adults go their entire lives not owning a suit.
Yep.
But that's okay, like, because it's like, if you want to wear a suit, you're still free to do that. It's just that I think
that's the weirdest thing, where it's like, and I was literally just on Facebook earlier, and they were talking about how what's the designer guy that he wore a dress to the Oscars? Not really a dress, a gown, and it's still kind of like a bottom half, because the top half he wore like a sport coat or this matching suit jacket, and a lot of people are like, oh man, this is what's going to happen to us, and I'm like, nothing's going to happen. No one's forcing you to wear a gown, and it's
the same thing. It's the same thing when people on vintage Facebook groups post photos of like weird runway stuff from like 15 years ago, and they're like, this is what they're trying to sell us. What the heck? I want to be Cary Grant.
And like, no one's stopping from being Cary Grant. Like, I'm pretty sure that you're not gonna
wear like a Wow Wow Wubsy costume. Like, that's not what runway shows, and that's not what fashion is.
But yeah, so to go back to the point now, so Avril says, let's talk about like millennials now. Like Spencer said, like a lot of people are going through life now without dressing up, and I mean, there's people like to people like to find this whole evidence of people saying you have to dress like this. They want people to say that. They want young people to say like, oh, we hate the suit. And I mean, and I'm sure maybe some do, but I mean, things are just definitely changing. Like, as me, like, I work for Ascot Chang, but if I wasn't, I'd probably be a marketer. Marketers don't have to wear suits. It's just like, the idea of wearing a uniform is gone now. And people are dressing for themselves way more than ever before. And I think it's a fallacy to think that like, oh, well, things have like, people changed, something crazy happened from the 50s or from the 30s or whatever. And I just think that there's so many more options. Avril says that later on in the video, where it allows people to kind of just pick and choose, what they want to be.
And this is something that's going to be maybe more relevant later on in the discussion.
Yeah.
But something I was thinking when I was watching the video is that people like to talk about, oh man, men were so much better dressed in the 1930s, 1940s, whatever. I am willing to bet that most men back then were also slobs. Like, I think the ratio of slobs to people who really cared about what they were wearing was probably the same back then as it is now. It's just you're looking at everything through rose-tinted glasses. So to say that there was a decline, even if they were wearing suits, doesn't mean they looked good. Like,
it's a crazy thing because I feel like that makes it like you're idealizing. I was like, your idolification. I guess that also is a word, but like you're turning the suit into like something that's super super special, and that's oh man, I guess someone just slammed something outside. You're turning it into something that is bigger than it is. Like this kind of goes with Jay's story where he goes to a country club or a golf club, and he's wearing cargo shorts from Brunello Cucinelli, so I'm sure that they're slim fit, they're nice, they're not baggy, but he gets called out for wearing them
because it's against the dress code.
Because it's against dress code, which says no cargo shorts. But then you look at everyone else who he says they're wearing like baggy dress pants or whatever, and it's like, okay, so baggy dress pants, they're still dress pants, and on scale
it's
they're
like
more
I
formal.
Imagine everyone is dressed like Larry David when he goes golfing, like big polo shirts, really long shorts, like a big straw hat or something like that.
Oh yeah, exactly.
And it's like they don't look good, but they're following the rules.
And that's the whole thing. Like when people, it's like I could go to my church wearing jeans and a button-up shirt, and I'd still look better than most of the other young people who are wearing suits. Probably sizes too big, shoulders are hanging off. But if you ask, one of my elders over there, I say elders not because I'm Mormon, because that they're just older than me. That you could argue that I'm too casual for church, and it's crazy where these people, like I said, like they idealize the suit and or formal wear, and just because they're wearing it makes it so much better than jeans. When I could have jeans that are hemmed properly, that fall nicely over my shoes, and a guy who's got like 3 inches too long. But I'm sure we'll get back to that again later. So let's talk about Bruce Boyer now.
Yeah.
And this is kind of the meat and potatoes of of where I disagree. And I think this actually was my first time seeing Bruce on camera and hearing him talk, as opposed to like reading an article that he wrote or something. And I know it's Bruce Boyer. How do you know it? Like it's just how it worked out for me.
Yeah.
And his whole thesis is what has happened to the sense of occasion, and we get this argument a lot.
And I used to think this way in high school all the time. Like when I would dress up when it was inappropriate, because I'm like, I'm just showing respect for the occasion.
Yeah, it's the whole Tom Ford quote where it's all like, oh, dressing well is just a form of good manners. So anyway, so Bruce has a story about how he went to a funeral, and how he and the corpse were the only one wearing ties. And he mentions a book by Richard Sennett, a sociology book, about how, there's people have two personas. You have the public and the private, and how because public I guess by public he means like, you know, like your office self, your work self, or your, you know,
Mm-hmm.
your dinner self compared to the one you are at home. He's saying that that person is dying, and so people are basically being their home self outside now.
Because his thesis, the entire thing, was that he thinks that things are getting.
No,
I'm not sure if he meant this in a negative way. I'm sure he did, but
yeah.
he believes things are getting too casual, both in terms of how men dress and just socially.
Yeah, he has another funny story about how he goes to a restaurant for a $35 hamburger, and he's all like, and so it's an occasion, and then you're sitting next to someone in distressed jeans, and it takes away
Mm-hmm.
from it. And I think that's so, it's literally the example of like someone feeling that their marriage is threatened because of a gay person. And it's like, oh, yeah, you literally can't enjoy your $35 hamburger because someone else is wearing distressed jeans. And
Yeah, I don't necessarily. Again, it's like as someone who long ago stopped caring what other people are wearing for the most part.
yeah,
I don't get that.
yeah, it's so I think okay, so you know when you said that you know you had this whole idea of well manners, when you're dressing up, well manners, have being well mannered.
Yeah.
I never had that personally. I think that I definitely idealized dressing up, but I
Mm-hmm.
never had the lifestyle for it. You know, it's I never like I'm not gonna dress up. Like I was conscious of like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna go to McDonald's. Like why am I wearing a suit right
I mean,
now? Like
I didn't have the lifestyle for it either. I didn't dress up when I was like going to McDonald's, but I found dumbass excuses to put on a suit.
right, yeah, yeah, you're right. You know, like you
Yeah.
know maybe it's like, oh, Christmas dinner, I'm gonna wear a suit. You know, and
Exactly.
because it's a
Yeah.
special time, and you know that ties into the whole occasion thing. But like I mean, at very early, I was like, you know what? This is not like this
Mm-hmm.
is not really a good argument for dressing up. You
Yeah.
know, it's nothing's being taken away. In fact, I mean, I'm looking bad for being the one dressed up. You
Mm-hmm.
know, and I'm not, and I, as much as I like to be a rebel, I don't think that it's right for me to be like, fuck you guys, I'm gonna wear a suit, because I don't think that reflects well on me,
Yeah.
especially as a young person. You know, maybe if you're older, you don't really give a fuck, but like to me, I'm like, no, I want to date someone. I want to have friends. I want my
Mm-hmm.
friends. I want to have a good time, and I'm not gonna wear a suit to hang out with my friends when we're getting burgers and going bowling
Yeah.
because that's stupid.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and you know, like that's basically Bruce's thing. And interestingly enough, when we're talking about the rules, with you know where Jay was talking about you know wearing the cargo shorts and he was called out for not wearing dress pants or whatever, Bruce says that bad taste isn't a crime, and I think that's so like that it's really telling that he really does have this whole. And I'm not trying to call out Bruce Boyer, but I'm just saying like it makes sense of where he's coming from, where he'd rather have someone wear a suit even if it's bad fitting, than to have someone wear cargo pants.
Mm-hmm.
And because he thinks, because at least I guess in his mind that when you're adhering to the rules, you are having that sense of occasion. And I think the biggest thing that I don't think they really talked about is that it's true, occasion is gone. And I think that's because people don't want to adhere to that because they want to be true to themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Like having dinner to me isn't an occasion, it's just something I'm doing. Like that $35 hamburger, maybe I'd feel worse. Like say if we're celebrating a birthday and we all agreed to go to a fancy restaurant, that's a little bit different. But if I'm going by myself to a fancy restaurant, I don't really care, you know. And if I want to get dressed up, I can. But I don't think that's a really big occasion, you know. It's different when you're doing like at least when Bruce's story is coming around. I think it looks like he's doing it by himself as opposed to, you know, having a like maybe doing a wedding party and like one person is wearing jeans. Like I can see where
Yeah.
that's kind of a weird thing. But yeah, I personally think occasion is dead. I don't. As menswear moves again into this whole fashion oriented thing as opposed to a lifestyle thing, you know, like I can't speak for everyone who likes menswear, but like at least me and Spencer, we don't have to smoke cigars. We don't have to go to fancy clubs. Anyway, I think we talked about this with the Cicada Club. Like that's just really just not our lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of like, yeah, we like the clothes, but we don't necessarily have that whole old money attachment to tradition.
Exactly.
You know,
Which kind of, as Scott points out, that a lot of people our age don't want to be associated with that kind of privilege, which I definitely understand.
yeah,
So it's like rather than dressing up to show their, how, rather than dressing up to show their like class position, they're dressing down a little bit so they can seem they seem less elitist.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm still conscious of what I wear to certain things. Obviously, I think we all are. I think that this almost got into. I think they also talk about like this a little bit with the whole privilege thing, because I felt like they were almost going to go into a whole like, oh, like young people get very offended, you know, and I felt like my point to that wasn't going to be was more in line with what you were saying. I think that not showing privilege doesn't mean that you have to be like woke. I think it's just more of like you don't want to be associated with that, with that lifestyle, because menswear is very elitist, very aloof, and they can say it's not all they want, but that's basically what it is. Like, you know, and it's still present even in regular circles, because I mean there's this whole thing that we talked about on our live stream. If you don't follow us on Instagram, you definitely should, because we talk about stuff that's kind of like behind the scenes kind of thing. But I got asked about, you know, how I feel about hip hop menswear, and I think that's something that people don't really talk about. How I think as kind of a rebellion against the whole old money, listening to jazz, classical music, whatever you want to call it, menswear, you have the new era, which is I think is kind of almost on their way, you know, past their height now, of like these guys, you know, the whole NBA players were into suits. I think I call it like the dapper bro, where they're very, you know, it's like kind of like rowing blazers. You know, you kind of mix this whole old school aesthetic, but with like a very young mentality. Like you listen to hip hop, you listen to rap, it's very cool. And I think that also seems to become very elitist, because if you're not that, you're still not cool enough. You know, like there's still a bunch of, you know, they talk about tribes later on. But menswear as a whole is very aloof, because there's a sense of like you're dressing up. It's still, even though these guys are into hip hop, they still see that fashion is, or classic menswear is superior to the other styles of fashion, which is not. No one wants that. Yeah. And I think that, like Scott says at the end of his little point there, that if we get people to understand why we like it, not about the status, but about the construction, about the beauty of that thing, I think more people will get more involved and like it.
Because he was saying there's a lot of men in menswear who say this is how men should look. If you're a man, this is how you should look. And to call back to one of a previous episode, that did remind me a lot of like online style bloggers who I'm sure that they enjoy getting dressed, but I can't think of a video where they say this is why I enjoy getting dressed. They say this is how to get dressed to get laid and stuff like that. It's not get dressed because it's fun and it's a cool hobby. It's like get dressed and this because you're a man and this is how men should dress.
Yeah, it's really, I mean, every conversation I've had about that always goes in that direction, because they always say we're animals, we all exist to fuck or something like that. All life is sex, Jim. You understand this is a universal truth.
Do you want the sex metaphor or the nature metaphor?
Oh God, the nature one.
When two animals have sex.
Oh my God. But yeah, no, like it's so interesting that they have like there's that whole. You could say it's even old school still. It's still very old school, because you know that's what you expect of a man. There is no style behind it. They always hide behind, this is classic style, this is not fashion. Well, I would argue that it definitely is, because this is a conscious choice, and if you're talking about mainstream stuff, you're going against that whole thing. You know, it's still a very conscious fashion choice, and until people start thinking of it that way, people are gonna, it's always gonna have this whole divide between like all other realms and classic menswear or sartorial clothing. Bruce next talks about how it's kind of a weird thing, like what happens when socialism happens.
Well, because his whole thing is that everything is now more casual. He thinks it's all almost too democratized, too level of a playing field.
Yeah, and he's saying that people are kind of going to the lower common denominator instead of dressing up. Like no one, yeah.
I'm not sure if I had to read this in school. I'm not sure if this is curriculum at other schools, but there is a science fiction short story called Harrison Bergeron, or something like that, where the plot is in the distant future, It's a satire of like people who think like this, but it's like a thing in the distant future where equality is very important, and so like if you're smart, they make you like wear this helmet that blasts like these loud tones in your ears, so you can like you don't like it's harder for you to think. Like they make ballerinas wear like weights on their legs so they're not better than everybody else, and it's all about how evil equality is. But again, it's a satire of that's not what equality means. And again, not to throw shade on Bruce Boyer, because who am I? But,
yeah.
Like, but it's like it seems like he's kind of bringing up the same points that short story is.
This might be our most polarizing episode.
Yeah, and again, I was going to say at the end, but who cares what we think about this? Like, why are we talking about it?
Well, okay, to give us credit, I mean, I know we can joke about this, but I think that, again, as young people who are, I mean, at least responsible for a couple of guys in the LA menswear world to kind of get into this whole thing, I think it's important to talk about this because guys who come into this with that mentality end up being polarizing to other people. Like they like I think one of the things that I try and keep and that I think is very attractive to other people, that I hopefully the vibes that I bring out is what I'm saying, is that I'm very accepting and I like the democratization of fashion because I want that future where I get to go to work with a guy wearing Rick Owens and we just get a beer afterward or whatever. Like that to me is equality, and that to me is the idealized future, not where everyone is wearing suits or when everyone's wearing Rick Owens.
Yeah, because I mean, Bruce does make what I think is a valid point. Is he says that if you're going to say that classic menswear and tailoring is kind of out of reach for the average consumer, then you can say the same thing about a lot of more casual wear as well, because he brings up a point that's slightly exaggerated, but I mean, again, still valid, of like you can see Kim Kardashian wearing a pair of jeans.
Okay, yeah, I agreed with that.
That's like $1,800 or something like that, and that's not. I mean, that's not something that the average consumer can get into either.
Yeah, no, I agree. Because I mean, there used to be a time when guys would wear, when they would get a bespoke suit made. I think Bruce says this almost verbatim, that like it was like the big, like they saved up money for it. Like this is their special thing, and it still is. I mean, it's not like me and Spencer are just dropping bucks on bespoke everything. We still have a reverence for the craft, which they end up talking about later, how artisanal brands are kind of making this kind of comeback and how it's kind of important because, like with food or with coffee shops, when people want that artisanal thing, it's the same thing with clothing. There are guys out there, women too, on that realm who want the well-made heritage products, and that will probably never go away. But what I was trying to say is that, actually, I don't know what I was gonna say. I guess it was just mainly that, like, I think guys today are able to dress up in classic menswear now much more accessibly than they did ever before, and that to them, as young people are being born and new people get into this every day, like they don't have the same sense of occasion that their forefathers and and all the other influencers like Bruce or Simon had. Like you have guys like me and Spencer who are into this because of just the clothes. Like,
yeah.
And yeah, we have the reverence for the piece, but then like once we get it, we wear it the way we want to wear it. And we act in it the way we want to act in it. And I think Bruce kind of gets quiet after that whole part. But the next point, and again, we're not trying to spew Bruce. It's just a very interesting thing because again, this is like the first time I've ever heard him really talk or about anything or have an opinion.
Yeah. But yeah, and Simon starts asking about like dress codes and what we've got into earlier, where dressing up is not always more appropriate. But he's just like, if you're going somewhere for the first time and you don't know the dress code, what are you going to be wearing to it? Like, are you going to be afraid of being too dressed up?
Okay, and let me just say this out there. I get into stuff with Joshua Gooch all the time, but I really hate hypothetical questions or thought experiments because they never apply ever. Like, it's lying to your brain. It literally is, because there is no situation where that would happen. You're never going to be invited to something where you don't know the person doing it. And you're not going to have any situation where you don't know the context.
Mm-hmm.
Like they all say, "Oh, you're invited to a dinner party. You don't know anything. What are you gonna wear?" And I'm like, okay.
And there's a big discussion later on that we can probably glance past, but a lot of the guys are talking about or a few of them are just saying we don't know what to wear anymore. Like that's the one negative thing of everything being more casual is it's not.
Yeah.
Before it's like if you were going, yeah, I think they say this. It's like no, they say this right at the beginning. It's like if you're in a business context, you're gonna wear a 3-piece, pinstripe suit.
Yeah.
But if you're in a more casual context, you can wear a sport coat or you can wear a herringbone suit.
Yeah.
But now because it's the dress is not. It's not so standardized amongst men anymore. It's harder to know what's more appropriate. But
and then again, I think Avril says this later on. I guess we're gonna keep going through here, but she says that I would just go as myself. Like, obviously, I mean, even in my experiment thing, if someone were to invite me, they should know who I am, know. And they will accept whatever I'm wearing, or they should accept it. If I'm gonna accept them, I mean, I'm the guest here.
Yeah.
But I think they're putting too much thought into what people expect of them. I mean, nowadays there isn't really a dress code for any kind of party anymore. That could be a point for Bruce saying that there is no sense of occasion.
Mm-hmm.
But they're so scared of this whole thing where that really doesn't really apply anymore. Like even in their circles, if they were invited, they would probably know exactly what to wear.
Yeah,
and if
like
they
when we go to fashion events for the first time, we'll just ask the people that we know that have been before, oh, what's the kind of vibe going to be like? Like, and that's we figure it out pretty easily.
Yeah, and I hate, it goes into why I hate watching drama TV shows where there is no communication. They just, they make it harder on themselves, And I think in every video, like that Gentleman's Gazette or Teaching Men's Fashion has done about this whole topic of dress codes, they always say, ask the person inviting you. Like if you get invited to a wedding and it doesn't say black tie or it doesn't say anything, I would ask them. I mean, presumably the person who's inviting you, right?
Mm-hmm.
There is never going to be a situation where you have no context and no means of communicating with that person.
Yep.
So kill that thought right there.
Okay, we did that. If we go point by point through this entire thing, this is gonna be our longest episode yet. But
I know. So I'm scrolling through here. They talk. Okay, so here's a good one. So they talk about how Bruce. Oh man, talking about Bruce again. I'm sorry, Bruce. If you listen to this.
Still hope we get to meet you one day.
For those of you listening to this, we almost met him, but we didn't.
We were in New York, we were supposed to have lunch with him, but it fell through.
Maybe this is a bad idea.
He's not going to listen to our podcast.
Yeah, or maybe he'd love to get into this with us, and we can, tell him as a young person what we think. That's my hope for this.
What if we get him on the show and it's really heated? Like,
I would love that. That could be like our Pacquiao versus Mayweather fight.
Yeah.
So after they have this whole discussion about dress codes, Bruce says, I don't want to look like my son. And it's kind of like how, he talks about how rich guys nowadays, maybe like a banker, they dress like their kids, where,
and
they
he
would
says
wear like
that
T-shirts.
It betrays a deep insecurity, is what he believes.
Yeah, and he goes, and I think that maybe his son doesn't even respect him. And I'm like, that's kind of reaching. Like, that's...
Yeah, it's like, I get where you're coming from, where if a guy is trying to look much younger than
I know the thing that he's looking at, yeah.
Yeah. But that last part was, I was like, ooh, that's a spicy meatball.
Yeah. But then Scott says what I would say is that maybe that guy is a surfer guy and he wants to look like a kid because that's what he wants to do.
There's an episode of Portlandia where Roseanne Barr plays the interim mayor when the regular mayor of Portland he resigned because they found out that he was the city's biggest energy hog, and now he's like living on a farm somewhere. But she sees so Roseanne sees like a skateboarder, like a guy in his 50s, and she's like, isn't he a little bit too old to skate? And it's like, what's he doing over there? It's like, no, that's just how it is. Like he's just a skateboarder. That's just how it looks.
I mean, it's like Tony Hawk is literally like 50 years old now, or maybe 40 or something like that. I don't know how old Tony Hawk is. But you're not gonna just stop him. And I would flip this back on Bruce. And again, I don't want to keep pushing on Bruce. But when he says this guy's captain of industry, this banker guy is dressing like a kid, I would argue so this captain of industry, shouldn't he have the freedom to pick what he wants to wear? Like, why should this guy who is rich and has means feel trapped into wearing what people expect of him? You know, he's presumably a millionaire or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
If I was a millionaire, I would wear whatever the hell I wanted.
But I think we can also give him a little bit of credit, and I think we can both agree there's a difference between a guy who's been surfing since he was 13 and just dressing because that's how he likes, and someone who's obviously
trying too hard. Yeah.
Like I had a friend in high school whose dad always wore like up top regular dad outfits, but he always wore like really obnoxious bedazzled jeans.
That sounds hilarious.
With like stitchings of guns and like money in the back pockets and stuff like that. And that's different than someone, a guy who's been skateboarding. And to give Bruce 70s.
Credit, I would also flip, like, there are a couple of people out there who are young and dress up that clearly dress too old for who they are, or they try to. I mean, it's basically the whole try hard thing. Like, I think that if you have a real style, and I'm sure Bruce would agree with this, like, you would like. It should be effortless.
Yeah, and we can also talk about not even just in casual wear. If it's an older guy that's wearing like a really slim suit with like a 1 inch lapel and stuff like that, because that's what he thinks that young people are wearing. Yeah, that's different.
Yeah, but like there are guys out there who wear slim suits and who look normal in them. Like they're just doing their whole thing. And on the flip side again, like I said, like a young guy who is, wearing spats and a top hat because he wants to be cool. And I'm like, well, I would argue no one should wear that. But yeah, I mean, it's very interesting. So I will give Bruce credit to what he is saying. I think that it just wasn't said nicely, I guess, and I think Scott and Simon say that later, where I think menswear has to learn how to be a little more accepting and a bit more gentle in how they approach other stuff. So if we keep scrolling down through here, they talk about tribes, the kind of what we said, where nowadays everyone has like their own thing. Like if you're going to be invited to a dinner party, presumably they would also be wearing suits. Like if I was invited to if Spencer invited me to something with Jay and Andy and all of their friends, I would assume we're all wearing ties at least or something like that, or if I was invited to hang out with my friend Scott, I would wear a t-shirt and jeans, because that's just it's again, like I said, there's never going to be that thought experiment. It's so stupid. And one of the other great points from this, I think, which is nearing the end now, where Simon asks Avril that if it's like women's wear now, if menswear is becoming like women's wear, and she has to agree, because for a long time women have had so many options, and now men, I think that people aren't confused for sake of offending. I think people are confused now because there are so many options that they want to be. Like you have rowing blazers where you get guys who are super into like the streetwear type of thing, but they're also into classic tailoring in a sense, and they want both. You get, and there's a whole thing of like how punk guys are also into menswear because it's very similar, but they still have those punk roots. And I think Jay earlier talks about his son, where his son got a suit, but he also loves to wear athleisure or whatever.
He said that it's like his son wears like athleisure all the time, but when it came time for prom or winter formal or whatever, he's like, I want a suit. I don't just want to wear like a blazer or something like that. I want a full suit.
And I think that that's like such a great point, because the democratization means people get to be whoever they want to be. Like I've talked about so many times, like I like being able to move between Ivy, between vintage, between workwear at will. And in the past, if this was like 50 years ago or whatever, you couldn't do that.
Yeah.
You could have to pick one. And I think all these guys kind of have one. Like you don't really see Simon wear jeans or something. I mean, I guess he does have jeans, but you wouldn't see Bruce Boyer wear jeans. And I think he would argue that jeans are perfectly acceptable, but he wouldn't do that, and I think that I differ from that because I like to have those options.
Because we can also, I mean, it's like they talk about a decline, but I wasn't conscious of anything like this back then, but I feel like 20 years ago, it's like when people were inventing like dumbass slurs for straight guys who who are interested in fashion and just not being a slob, like calling people metrosexual. I feel like it's so much easier to be into clothes now than it was.
Because it's totally acceptable, ago. And I think even Simon says that menswear has been on the rise like the past 5 or 10 years. Yeah, they talk about
it's like there's like a growing interest. There's a growing interest in bespoke tailoring,
and that's like my whole thing. Like I'm like, the whole idea is that you get to be in this for the fashion of it, and I said that so many times, and I will say it again because that's what I exist to do. I don't have these preconceived notions about fashion or menswear like these other guys did, and yeah, I mean it's just, and this whole thing, it'll never really die. The suit's not going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
Like Die Workwear said, the suit is dead in terms of dress codes. I think Goldman Sachs just issued like, we're changing the dress code now, but like I think that means that guys will be happier and come to work, and Scott says this later on, which we'll address, but like he talks about how he addresses that whole thing where when people say men dress better 50 years ago, he said, I would argue that 50 years ago guys still hated wearing suits back then. And yeah, that's basically what the whole thing is. I mean, because
when my grandpa retired, I don't know exactly when it was, 60s, 70s, 80s, or it was in the 70s or 80s. I think he told me he burned all his ties, and even when he was wearing ties, they were clip-ons. So it's like, yeah, it's like he didn't like getting dressed back then.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Like these guys would rather have guys wear baggy suits than no suit at all. Mm-hmm. They're adhering to this whole thing. So
yeah,
as we wrap.
This also kind of reminds me of a discussion that pops up a lot in vintage Facebook groups about Tom Brown.
Oh my God, yeah.
And about a lot of guys into vintage hate him because they think he like ruined the suit, because when he made these like weird proportions and stuff like that. And it's not necessarily what I'm into. I wouldn't wear it.
Yeah.
But and I've seen a lot written about this, so this isn't a new original point by Spencer. But you could make the same argument that he saved the suit, because it's like he made it something new. Otherwise, like he found some way to innovate to save it just from itself.
Yeah, it's and if he didn't do that, people wouldn't feel like they had a taste in suits, because like now that there was something different, you couldn't be like, I want wide lapels.
That and Mad Men really kickstarted this whole interest in men dressing up again. That's that was it.
Exactly. So right before we finish here, let's address the audience questions. There's only 3 of them. But they have there's a bunch of content in this one. So the first question they ask is, a guy says that whether or not how to dress nicely versus a costume, because on the flip side, he likes to dress up, but at his work they're very dressed down. And someone asked him if he was Black Bart. I think that's so weird. But he says how to not look like you're wearing a dinner jacket to a basketball game, and I would say don't wear a dinner jacket to a basketball game. Yeah. Like there's this whole idea of when people talk about dress code, I feel like there's a difference between dress code and then imposing your style onto other people. Mm-hmm. And just how there are there's tuxedos and business suits. Like you gotta apply that same logic to work or whatever you're doing. I'm not saying that you have to sacrifice your personal style, but like me, I think that I know my style so well that I can still look good even if I'm not wearing a suit. Yeah. And I think that's something super important that, again, I don't feel like a lot of menswear guys have, because they adhere to this one thing of the idealized suit, and they think that that's the only thing for them. And it's a part of the animosity could come from how you're carrying yourself when you're wearing the suit. Like I feel like a lot of people who ask me this question, like how do you react when people when you're wearing a suit? I'm like, well, when I wear my suit, I have my hands in my pockets, I'm kind of slouching around, I'm just reclining. Like I feel like if you look at me, you wouldn't ask me if I'm going to like prom or something, or if I'm gonna be a lawyer. Like I mean, I feel like a lawyer wouldn't wear what I'm wearing to court or something like that, and I think a lot of this whole stuff is, it's not victim blaming, but it's kind of like you're passing the blame onto everyone except yourself, and I don't know what this guy was wearing. You didn't see him, like the picture of when he was talking on the thing, but I've seen people who ask me these questions on Instagram or in person, and I'm like, maybe don't wear a top hat to go into Starbucks, or whatever.
Exactly. Like, it's like as much if you're working in Silicon Valley, as much as you might like wearing a suit, maybe leave it at home.
Yeah,
You know?
or do I mean at the end of the day, no one really cares what you wear. Like I feel like I mean a lot of my friends, maybe until very recently, they didn't really dress up either. I'm talking about my friends other than Spencer, but they don't care. Like they don't, it doesn't really matter. It's kind of just like my thing, just like how maybe wearing an anime T-shirt is your thing. It's just people might comment on once in a while, then after that they won't. And I think that if you stop making it such a big deal, people won't make it a big deal.
Yeah,
and I think that's, again, take a look at yourself before you start, looking at other people. The next question.
It was so they bring up an interesting point where they talk about how men they like Scott talks about how his girlfriend went to a party at Drake's. And she commented that they're all over accessorized.
I kind of want to know what she's talking about. Maybe she counts like pocket squares and ties as accessories.
Yeah, so they talk.
I mean, that's a good point too. But I like what Avril said. Like if you're believe in yourself, being eclectic. Eclectic. That's gonna be the new meme. Do it. I mean, everyone has their own style, and I think that's important. The next question was kind of about brands.
Yeah.
I think it's I think it's very true that nowadays, guys. I mean, there is an interest of it, but like when you're moving to the bespoke world, bespoke is basically. When guys go to bespoke, traditionally they have an idea already of what they want, but nowadays I think guys, because of the heritage aspect of it, they feel that it's like the next step. It happens to me at Ascot Chang, and they don't really know what they want when they go into the store.
They just say it's like, I want a nicer suit, like I want a better suit than what I already have.
Yeah, and I think all of these guys kind of say that as times move on, I think that what retail does, like Ralph Lauren, they have curated looks like in the store, that way like you have an idea of what you want.
I thought this was I really liked that this question and their answers, because they talked about they said specifically a brand should have a point of view, like it should have a specific style, which I think is I think that's really great, because it's like if I'm saving up for a bespoke suit, I know I'm going to get something different if I go to, if I get something from PJT, or if I get something from Anglo-Italian or whatever. Like they all have their own distinct looks, which I think can really help, and you have to explain, like, this is what we're going for. Like you have to make it clear.
And another thing that I thought was really good was when they say that the customer, the navy suit to them is not a navy suit. To them it might be like a floral print jacket, and
they talk about it's like you have to tell them, you have to be able to show them how it's going to look, because it's like Simon says, I think he uses the example of, if you just show someone pink corduroy on a swatch, they're not going to know what to pair that with. They're not going to know what the final product is. But if you say pink corduroy is going to look good with jeans, then that's something. That's a step forward.
Yeah, I know, and well, I think what he was saying was that, like they don't want a navy suit, but they might want a pink corduroy jacket to wear with their jeans, and like I think what a lot of tailoring, or I guess what they were saying is that a lot of tailoring, what the issue is that when they go to these things, they end up getting shut down. The customer gets shut down because they're not seeing the possibilities that you can do with bespoke or with custom clothing, and as brands move into that, like that whole, like, I mean, that's why, like, PGT, like, they show you exactly, like, all the weird ways you can wear it or whatever. And I think, having a point of view and then showing the possibilities, I think, is an important way of keep making sure that Savile Row will survive. And I think, even if they don't, Savile Row will still survive, and there's always going to be the heritage aspect to it. Now, the last one, was such a weird question, and I feel like she was trying to trigger people. Like, I don't know if you remember this one, Spencer. I don't know if you got all the way to the end.
I did, yeah.
But she says, like, it's this woman. She says, like, I didn't even know what I walked into, or maybe she said she got lost. I'm not sure, but she says that all the men look the same.
Yeah, that was a weird question, because she says, like, I came into the wrong room. I just kind of sat through. It's like when Dwight thought he was seeing Grizzly Man, but but he just sat there waiting for the bear attack.
Okay, so the woman says, 21st century isn't about dressing up or dressing down, but in or out. And I guess she's talking kind of about public versus private self, or something like that, kind of like what Bruce Boyer said earlier. And she also says, how do you take the suit to the next level? How will globalization change the suit? And she says that, when she's looking at all these guys, they all look the same to her. And Bruce, now that we're back on Bruce's side, he says that everyone looks completely different to him. That men's clothing, I would agree with everything he's saying right now. Men's clothing is more subtle than women's.
Yeah.
And they talk a little bit about like Asia, how people think that's gonna be the next center of everything, and how Simon talks about how in Japan it's a good example because they don't have the heritage that America or better case England would have, with Savile Row and everything. Japan is kind of taking what they got. They had suits like the 30s and 40s, but like American Western wear didn't really take off to like the 50s, and they kind of did their own spin on it, and they're probably more obsessive than you and I are, or even these guys.
Yeah.
But the thing that I'm kind of latching on to is, and this is kind of separate from the whole topic, but the whole idea that she thought all the men looked the same, and how I feel like she wanted them to say something kind of drastic. I don't know who she is, and again, like Spencer said, it sounded kind of weird, like she kind of just wandered in there. But it kind of reminds me, and this could be a whole thing, but we recently a woman talked about Beau Brummel.
Oh,
and how,
yeah. It's a big Twitter thread.
Yeah, basically, she's kind of blaming him for toxic masculinity, because he kind of invented, in a sense, like subtle menswear, in a sense. And while I get what she's saying, I already addressed this on my own feed. But like he was like one dandy out of like there's even Oscar Wilde, who is like the entire opposite of Beau Brummel. He was like Beau Brummel was a minimalist, while you could argue Oscar Wilde was like a maximalist, asceticism and everything. And those kind of guys they had their own influence and everything. So I wouldn't really agree, but I wouldn't really agree with the Twitter lady. But I'm seeing a lot of similarities here where women, and I don't want to come off as sexist or anything, but like they don't. Maybe just because they're used to something super different. Like Bruce says that the length of a woman's skirt will change like within like a foot based on like the season, while a men's lapel will change like a quarter of an inch like every century or every like 50 years or so.
And then she says something that I don't understand what she means, and she says, well, you're talking about like privileged men or something like that, and I didn't know where she was going with that point.
Yeah, I was super confused. Like I thought, like I genuinely think she's trying to get like a gotcha moment where like these guys were doing this whole thing. But I agree with everything Bruce said, and it's interesting that I think all these people, I guess, if we're coming from the other perspective, if menswear is kind of like an older guy being like, hey, kids, dress up, I think that the younger people or non-menswear people are trying to expect menswear to be super drastic. And this is my whole view, where I don't think that fashion has to be drastic or bold to be good.
Yeah, because at the end of the Twitter thread, that woman was talking about it, and this is the same. We took a break, and we probably should have looked up the name of this person in between the break.
Yeah.
But that the person at the Oscars who was wearing like the blazer up top and the like long flowing gown on the bottom, she was like, "This is great. It's like, see, this is what men could have been dressing like if it weren't for Beau Brummel," and it's
that's kind of a weird thing to say, because
it's like I thought that was a cool look, but
I like it,
but it's that's not saying that every man should dress like that isn't great either.
It's a weird thing. Like I don't like extremes on both ends is bad. Like I don't think that everyone has to wear a suit, but I also don't like I said, I don't think you have to wear a dress to be fashionable. And the future I want is where Rick Owens and Savile Row suits can exist in the same work environment or dinner or whatever, and no one cares. In fact, you could even say that they complement each other. Like, oh, that's a dope outfit, which is literally what happens like with us. Like Spencer and I, again, I think, to kind of wrap this up, I think the reason why I really wanted to talk about this is because, like, if this was like, they keep talking about like back in the day or how everything's changing, like I literally shouldn't be able to be talking about this. Like I don't afford bespoke. I don't have the lifestyle. I don't want the lifestyle. If you compare me to them, like I shouldn't be able to be talking about this with you guys I shouldn't have an audience, but I do, and it's a testament to the fact that the accessibility and the democratization of fashion is so important and so influential that it's like it's brought me to where I am and to where Spencer and I can be talking about this.
And that's actually, so if we're getting into points like that, there were a couple things that I thought that we kind of skimmed over.
Yeah.
That were really interesting points brought up. And that kind of segues perfectly into when they do talk about social media. Because I think it was Simon who said, don't you think that we're going to, with social media, because it's so fast moving, it's going to be really hard to discern what it is that you like and what your kind of identity is going to be. And I disagreed with him because I don't think I'm not going to say Simon Crompton, who runs one of those popular style blogs in the world.
Let's just keep bagging on everyone.
Doesn't know how social media works, but it's at least the way he's describing it is not at all how I use social media. Like when I'm looking at social media, when I'm looking at Instagram for outfit ideas or inspiration or whatever, I'm not going to the hashtag fashion. Like I'm not following hashtag fashion, hashtag suits, and just being like, oh my god, there's so much stuff. I'm like looking up hashtag vintage workwear, hashtag I'm looking up really specific things or something like that. I'm searching for the things that I like, and I'm not looking at it see, okay, this is the trend today, and then it's not the trend next week. I'm like, oh shoot, well now I got to change everything.
Yeah, and the reason why I'm into so many things is because I probably know half the people on my feed, and I've talked to them, and then the other half are people that are friends with those people that I'm like, hey, I like that. I'm never using the explore page. It all comes from a sense of familiarity. I'm into so much stuff because I see it on people that I know and respect, and I'm like, I like that they do it well. I'm gonna do it my way. I'm not doing it because it's the next big thing.
Yeah.
And then your point was so great. I think that it would have helped to have Jeremy Kirkland or someone else on this panel who is knows a little bit about Instagram, because I feel like these guys probably all have social media. I don't know about Bruce Boyer, but I feel like people like Simon, and I could just be reaching here, but I feel like they got it because it was a necessity at the time. That's the next step, right? The next new media. And I remember Scott Schumann talking about that when I saw him talk about it at a what was it, a little interview. His fiance Jenny Walton interviewed him. It was for his exhibit, a couple of anyway. He was saying how the blog is still going, but a lot of his focus is on Instagram because it's very intriguing, it's very new. It's the images are cropped differently, and I'm like, it is new, but I feel like it's not that new. It's just it's just another form of media. It's not really revolutionary. It's just another platform for things to be on. It's kind of newspapers were they're talking about digital, but I feel like if they just kind of just moved to being newspapers on websites, nothing really changed. They still have advertising. You still have to pay to $1 or whatever to read the whole thing, and it's just such a big, I guess, to bring it home, I think the biggest thing other than the lifestyle is just that I don't think they understand completely how the youth is kind of consuming fashion now.
Yeah.
And social media and how it all plays a part. Because you look at the Drake's guys. I thought of this during the little break that we took that you guys won't notice because we'll splice it seamlessly. But when you're talking about lifestyle, these guys, the Bullshot Book Club, that's kind of it's a good example of the youth. That you've got classic menswear from the Drake's guys. You've got kind of a modern interpretation, with Effie Castleberry or his own take on it. And then you've got their other friends who do their own thing, and they all kind of just hang out and they get drinks and they have dinner and they talk about Infinite Jest. I don't know if they're currently still reading that.
Yeah.
But that's kind of what it is now. There is no sense of they're gonna go out to a steak dinner and then they're like, oh man, everyone's so dressed down. Why do we do this anymore? No, they don't. I could just be, putting words in their mouth, but they look like they have fun.
Yeah, because when we had dinner with the Drake's guys, we were the only ones in that restaurant dressed the way we were, and we weren't like, oh man, the occasion is ruined. Like, we were just having fun hanging out.
Yeah, and when I first hung out with them, the first time in New York, last year, I think someone came up to us and asked us like why we were all dressed up. And like, oh no, we all work, like I think Matt said or someone said like we all work in the industry, but then Alex said, oh no, we all just like dressing like English professors and hanging out, and like that was it. And the guy was like, cool, and like walked away, and like that was it. Like no one, there is no offended part of it, you know, like no one's feeling. And again, you know, you could argue that was one instance in, you know, a whole thing. Maybe other people have weird animosity with their coworkers or something. But in general, I mean, people don't really care that much. Sure, it might be different for like a split second, but then people get used to it unless you make it a big deal. Yeah. And I don't think any of us really make it a big deal.
And then later on in that question, Scott, who was really a beacon of positivity during this whole thing, he talks about what he really likes about social media is that it kind of, I mean, it once again kind of democratizes everything, gives more people access to information that they wouldn't have before. Like, he has an anecdote, I think it was somewhere in Africa.
Oh, yeah, I think he was in Cape Town. I don't know.
Maybe. But it was a kid that he said lived in a house made of cinder blocks. Like he and his friends would like found a wall that kind of looks like the pity wall, and they would just
dress up and take pictures. And
it's like he knew about it because of like Instagram and the internet, because he couldn't get he says it's like he can't get a subscription to Esquire or GQ where he lives, but he has
Instagram's free
access. Yeah, exactly.
And
so
I think
that's what's really cool.
And even at one point, Scott also talks about how, on like the flip side of social media, like when he takes pictures of people, like it's not always what he would wear, but he can always learn something from it. Yeah. And I have that same thing when I tell other people that. Like I have a little cousin. He's in like high school. He asked me like how I get when I dress up, and I'm like, you know, just look at people around you, and you think, hey, that outfit's cool. It's weird, but I'm like, okay, I like the colors that they're doing, and you can always incorporate that. Like, you know, wearing brown and blue isn't always a menswear thing. You see that across everything else, but you can still take those ideas and apply that. And I think, and then, like Spencer said, you see it on social media. You know, if you have a closed off circle or you live somewhere really, you know, different, you might not normally find this stuff, but because of social media, you have it. Yeah. And you know, I mean, at the end of the day, I think I'm agreeing a lot with what Scott said. You know, it's kind of surprising because I don't know. I guess, you know, me and him will both take pictures. Maybe we just like, you know, we have a similar point of view.
Yep, best friends.
Yeah, Scott and Ethan. I mean, that's kind of a funny thing because for those of you who are listening who don't know, one of my oldest friends is named Scott. So,
yep,
little inside joke there. Always wanted to be part of one.
Small joke.
But I think that's all the points there. I think, you know, again, I mean, again, like I said, the reason why I feel very strongly about this is because, you know, I'm kind of on the other side of, you know, I shouldn't be able to dress up, but I do it anyway. And I mean, yeah, menswear can be a little bit elitist, but I think that adopting this kind of view is what will get people into it. Like just kind of abandoning the lifestyle, the heritage of like behind it, not the construction or whatever, but like abandoning those preconceived notions and just thinking of it as like this is like a suit because, like Scott says, like you wear it because you want to wear it, you know, and that's why you dress up, and then communicating that, which I think I do to my readers, to my friends, they can appreciate it too, and they won't think of me as Black Bart for wearing a pocket square. Yep. What do you think, Spence? What are your final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think we basically covered everything. I mean, it was a very interesting discussion. Like I said, it was one that has been talked about before, but it was with a bunch of people who had, you know, they all had slightly different points of view.
And they certainly have a lot of authority on everything.
Exactly. I mean, yeah, again, and like, you know, we talked a lot of shit, but we have, in case anyone somehow listens to this, we have no animosity towards any of the people on the stage.
Especially Bruce Boyer.
I
mean, even then, you know, it's like professional disagreements, you know. Obviously, exactly. Like, you know, we respect the hell out of him. And, And yeah, I mean, obviously he set kind of a precedent for literally Simon and for me, for people to actually just write about style, academically or journalistically. So obviously we have a lot of respect for him. But that said, I mean, we definitely disagree with a couple of his points in the video. And,
but I mean, I enjoyed the discussion. I hope that they continue.
They should do this more. And maybe this means we should look at the other ones.
Yeah, maybe. So they know that they see that sweet viewer count going up.
Yeah. If you guys have any other concerns, feel free to email us, or probably better just to reach out to us on Instagram.
Yeah.
Join in our live videos. I go live every once in a while. And that's probably the best way to kind of get into a dialogue with me and Spencer. But yeah, my Instagram is at Ethan M. Wong.
I'm at Spencer DSO.
And feel free to follow the podcast at Style and Direction. We tend to post mainly about the podcast itself, while our personal ones are just, our personal stuff.
Yeah.
I don't think there's going to be show notes for this one.
Yeah, I mean, just watch the video. You could post a blog post. It's like, here's the episode and here's the video we're talking about, and that's about it.
Yeah. That'll probably be it. But, again, contact us if you have any more ideas of what we should discuss next. We really appreciate the feedback, and we hope that you guys have been enjoying these quicker, having stuff out on a better schedule, because now we've been pretty good about releasing stuff
every 2 weeks.
Yeah, exactly. Except with the rain one, because that came out the week after the Spear Point one.
Oh, whoops.
Yep. But it'll at least come. You can expect it to every week to every 2 weeks. It's not going to be as bad. I know I say that now, but we'll find out.
Yeah.
All right, we'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.
Bye.